In this video, we talk about constants and variables. In this video, you will learn everything about constants and variables. The difference between constants and variables, how to declare their type, what you have to keep in mind when giving them names, and how you can print their values. Constants and variables have something in common. They both have a name, like number of wheels or location. Now let's say we have a car. That car has number of wheels and a location. Because the number of wheels does not change, we use a constant for that purpose. And we choose the location to be a variable because the location will change often. Both constants and variables store a value, like 4 in case of the number of wheels and Atlanta as a location. Now let's have a look at constants. When you assign a value to a constant, you will never be able to change it again. The value is locked. On the other hand, for variables, you can change the value any time. Now let's have a look at the code that we write for this scenario. For constants, we use the word let, and for variables, the word var. Let me show these things in a short demo. Now let's have a look at variables and constants. First, we define a constant. We have a car with number of wheels, and the car has 4 wheels. Now the car has a location, and the current location is Atlanta. Now we drive to Springfield. There's an error. What is wrong here? Cannot assign to let value location. Let defines a constant. The constant is called location, and it is not possible to change the value of a constant. Now what I can do here is tell the compiler that location is actually a variable. Type annotations. Variables and constants have a type, and most of the time the type can be inferred. That means the compiler knows what type the variable should have. For example, when you assign the value Luther to the constant first name, the compiler knows that first name must be a string. When you assign 47.0 to a constant, the compiler knows this must be a double. And when you assign 2014, it must be an int. In the case of Boolean values, if you set true or false as a value, the compiler knows this is a bool. Now, although the compiler knows what type these constants and variables have, it's allowed to set the type explicitly. Types of variables are inferred most of the time. In these cases, the type is obvious and the compiler knows the type that is needed. Let's see if we can assign a string to number. No, we can't. Number is an int. Let's see if we can assign an int to name. No, we can't. Name is of type string. The compiler knows what type the variables have by looking at the value that we assign. What it actually does is it sets the type of number to int, and it sets the type of name to string. We could add the types here, but we don't have to. Sometimes we must set a type, like in this case, where we declare the variable first name on line 7, but don't assign a value right away. The compiler does not know what value you will assign later, and so it complains with an error. And therefore, we need to explicitly annotate the type. In this case, it's a string. Sometimes we have to tell the compiler the type. Let's see. That doesn't work. Why? The compiler has no idea about the type of city because it's only assigned later. Now let's tell him that this is a string, and here we go. A few things about naming. It is not allowed to use mathematical symbols, arrows, line or box drawing characters, or invalid Unicode characters. Further, the name must not start with a digit, but it can contain digits anywhere else. A few things about printing. Printline is a global function that allows you to write strings to the console. In this case, the words "Hello World" are written to the console. It's also easy to print the current values of variables and constants. Wrap the name of a variable between parentheses and escape it with a backslash. Again, let me show this in a short demo. There is a function that prints to the console. It's called print. You can watch the console on the right. Let's print "Hello World." Now let's print something else. "Hello New York." As you can see, both strings are on the same line. Why is that? The function print does not start a new line. It writes everything to the same line. So To have separate lines, we have to use the function println instead. Now it works as expected. What about variables? Again, we use the function println, and we have a string that we print. Now we want to use the variable we defined before. We use a backslash, parentheses, the name of the variable, and close the parentheses again. And on the right side you see the console output that works as expected. Now we can also print integers like this. Again, check the output. That's the end of this lesson. You now know the difference between constants and variables. You know how to declare their type if you have to, and how to name them. You know how to print their values